Good afternoon. Welcome back to part two of today's special episode of NFTs Live. On with us here, we've got Gabe. So we will be interviewing Gabe at Doc Gables on Twitter, who is a co-founder of Bitlectro Labs. Bitlectro Labs is a team of developers, artists, and blockchain experts who aim to bring unique audiovisual NFTs to the growing world of digital art and collectibles. They've got two main collections, Dream Loops and Dreamers, and today we'll be talking more about the Dreamers ahead of their upcoming airdrop, Dreamers Vx. Beyond his work for Bitlectro, Gabe is also tied into the Chris Graves project, is a Zeneca 333 member, has a PhD, and is a sometimes DJ. I'm excited to hear about any and all of that. Gabe, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me, Tyler. How's it going?
Oh, I'm good. It's been an interesting few weeks in the NFTs. We were back in the bull market, spirits up. We were chatting a little bit before the show. It feels like overall sentiment and vibe is trending up as well. So it's fun times again. I gotta say, I think you are our first PhD on NFTs Live.
Nice. That's cool.
Yeah. So I definitely would love to hear a little bit about that, your background and kind of how you went from PhD into NFTs and Web3.
Yeah. So I was in grad school back in 2013 when I learned about Bitcoin. And I was studying cognitive psychology, which later turned into me doing research in behavioral economics. Like a lot of the behavioral economists, like Kahneman and Tversky, Thaler, they're all just cognitive psychologists, but they study decision making in risky situations, or how we navigate risk or make decisions in the face of risk. Are we risk averse? Are we risk seeking? What are the characteristics that modulate these effects? So that was a lot of my research, like specifically into topics around something called framing biases. So framing really simply is how we package a message, right? So framing is used in advertising, right? Like often we'll frame things as a perspective gain versus a perspective loss in order to make someone do something. Anyway, so long-winded story. But while I was in grad school, I was sitting in bed one morning reading a Wired magazine article about the dark web, and they mentioned Bitcoin being used for payments. And sure, like it was cool, like, oh, I could buy psychedelics on the internet, but also what was this payment method? And I think maybe I closed the laptop, didn't buy any Bitcoin, saw the same thing come up 6 months later, took the plunge, did a old-fashioned wire transfer at my local credit union. The bank teller looked at me side-eyed, but I bought a few Bitcoin at $100 a unit. I think I lost those. I think I was actually like playing Satoshi dice and lost all of my Bitcoin at one point, rebought in. So I've been in the space for some time, but fast forward to 2020, everyone's at home. Buddy calls me, says, hey, I have a CryptoPunk. How do I sell that? I say, what's a CryptoPunk? He says it's an NFT. And I said, oh, like the crypto kitties that bogged down the Ethereum network back in 2017, 2018. And we figure out how he can sell it. He ends up dumping it for like $15,000, which for him was a tremendous amount of money at the time. Obviously, there's some hindsight bias there, a little bit of regret, but I became obsessed with them. So I immediately started buying, trading things. About a hash mask, that was my first one. I think I caught it a couple days after the mint. Still have it. Probably, like people talk about their forever NFT. I think the hash mask will be my forever NFT. Started trading, reached out to a friend of mine, Keel Corcoran, and I said, hey, I'm trading NFTs. I knew he was a big crypto trader. And he says, oh, like these are cool. I said, I think I want to make one. And he's like, I'm down. What do you want to make? I said, well, you're a musician. Let's do some music NFTs. And he produced this wonderful collection for us, the Dream Loops, and also designed all the art. He's a sort of a pixel artist by hobby. He's also like a historian of lost internet games and PC gaming. He actually collects a lot of computer hardware like Amigas and Commodores and old PCs. But he also has this wonderful archive of imagery from now lost PC games. A lot of it you can find on archive.org. And he was drawing this pixel art in his free time. So we said, well, let's combine your pixel art ability with your music production ability, produce the collection, had some fun roadmap items there, did physical album releases. Like we actually have cassette tapes and vinyl that you can redeem for a subset of the collection. Dropped the Dreamers a few months later, which was partially a sale, partially a free airdrop to the Dream Loops holders. We've got a pretty lofty roadmap for the Dreamers, but we're knocking those out. We've got our Vx release, which is a 3D voxelized version of the Dreamers that's dropping on Saturday. That's free for Dreamers holders. They just have to own a Dreamer, and then you get to claim the 3D version of that. We're also working on a DeFi product around the Dreamers that'll be launching later this year. That's what my engineers are focused on, but it's a medium to large lift from an engineering standpoint, but we're working through it, hopefully sharing some demos there. We've got another album dropping, and of course we've got a big Metaverse presence with monthly events. Got one happening today, in fact, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. Will be in our Metaverse parcel with the Oni Force and some community members of the Heart Project. They're doing performances. We've got like 8 DJs. It should be a crazy one. So yeah, so that was a long-winded explanation, but my background, how I got into NFTs, and then what we dropped. So I don't know. That was like,
No,
yeah,
I
sorry,
love it.
on a bit of a rant there, Tyler, but thank you for
No, and
that.
I want to get into all that in more detail. A lot to unpack. I kind of want to start a little bit more with your background in cognitive psychology, behavioral economics. I feel
Yeah.
like that's such an interesting field to inform, your decision making in the NFT market, which has, and I'll be blunt, I feel like a lot of immature traders,
Sure.
right? People who just entered the market. So I'm curious if you found that to be an advantage. Any specific tools that have helped you, when facing the market?
Yeah, I think so. One of the core kind of ironic things about a lot of the biases and phenomena that the behavioral economists talk about is that knowledge of the phenomena doesn't necessarily make you immune to them. So I think I'm an okay trader. However, like I still have a lot of hindsight bias. Like, we know you're never going to perfectly call the top. Like even the best technical traders in the world trading equities are never going to absolutely call the top. Sometimes you get lucky, but it's like that phrase, like trying to catch a falling knife. It's not going to happen. So I try to recognize the biases I'm interjecting into my behavior, either when trading or after making a sale, and say, nope, you're just interjecting hindsight bias, or no, you've got, the endowment effect is at work. You don't want to sell it because now you're attached to it and you're overvaluing it. You should let go of this thing. Like there's a lot of these phenomena that get described in behavioral econ that I see myself committing as I'm trading, and I try to overcome them when I identify them. Other times, I make impulsive decisions and I just buy things because I like the art, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I do say, like, in terms of like bankroll management though, and things like that, I tend to have a moderately conservative approach about certain things that I buy in the ecosystem. And I do try to buy multiples of everything so that I can sort of trade in a detached manner where it's not like the only one I have. So I reduce that endowment effect, for example, and I can sell half of my position and then retain ownership of the other thing. Also, I'd say some of it informs like company decisions. Like much of my research was in framing biases, and the way ultimately that your language can affect the message that you're conveying, and then the subsequent behavior and the receiver of those messages, right, of that marketing. And we know, much of this space is driven by FOMO, creating feelings of exclusivity. And no lie, we use the same techniques in our approach, but we are dealing with scarce goods in a digital marketplace. So a lot of it is true, but then you have to present that in a way that makes users understand, like, what is your value proposition? Why is this exclusive? Why is this good? Understand why our team is competent and is going to execute on all this cool stuff. There is some strategic framing around how we present this, and I'd say, some of our core competencies are art production, engineering. Despite my background, I'd say I'm not the best at marketing. So we do this, mostly through man hours spent. I've got a couple good outreach personnel on my team, and we don't spend a ton of money on marketing, but we do tend to have a pretty good amplification of our messaging, despite not throwing tons of money down the drain on influencers or impressions. Although it's real hard to spend through conventional marketing channels in the NFT ecosystem, as we can't advertise on Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, etc. But we would if we could. So a lot of it's quite organic, and then finding that right message, framing it appropriately, and finding our tribe within the ecosystem.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me to see how your background has informed your trading as well as decisions and launching the project. And before we move on, I've done some reading in behavioral economics, thinking fast and slow. It's funny. I was talking. I'm a two
Ottoman.
on a scale of 10. So I'm a noob. I'm a rookie. I was talking to a good buddy who trades, and we're just talking through all the biases that are present in NFT market, and they're all there.
Yeah.
Recency bias. I think survivorship
Hmm.
bias is probably the most dangerous one, and probably hurts feelings the most. It gets people down. It's when you see the people who are screaming on Twitter are the ones who made it, right. They picked the
Yeah.
right cartoon JPEG back when it was all the Wild West. So it's important to understand that, and for everyone who's made millions, right? There's 90% who are
Exactly.
lost or even. But
Interesting you bring that one up. I hadn't thought about survivorship bias in this context too, but yeah, recency is apparent, and then that survivorship bias also interacts with something we call availability bias. Is that those noisy success stories on Twitter are also the survivors in the circumstance that made the money, but that's readily available in our recent memory and attention, of course, through Twitter. Yeah, very
yeah,
astute.
and that Twitter algorithm just keeps putting it in our
Oh
faces
yeah. Oh yeah.
on a daily basis. They know what drives the engagement. But let's fast forward to Bitlectro and Dreamers, so we can get Dreamers up on the screen here and do the screen share. So let's do just quick preview for those who are listeners, viewers who may not be familiar with the project. So tagline on the site: Dreamers are a series of 16-bit NFT avatars with 8-bit musical loops minted on the Ethereum network. And I'm curious, kind of what informed that first and primary and major decision to go with like the 16-bit art and the musical loops for these.
And part of it was core competencies. Keel is a great illustrator. I mean, he can actually do vector and he can paint by hand and draw, but he at the time he was really efficient at pumping out pixel art. And we're nerds from 80s children, 90s children, grew up playing vintage PC games, which weren't vintage at the time. I would log on to bulletin board systems and trade ASCII art in the pre-internet era, and with my dial-up modem. So we're like OG pixel heads. So a lot of this was really just nostalgia for our childhoods and producing a product that we ourselves would want to consume within the NFT space. We're not necessarily 100% tied to pixel art forever. In fact, we've got a collaboration with an artist that's likely going to be something a little more fine art focused, probably launching this summer. But it was really like we were making a collection for ourselves. So even within the Dreamers, like the traits, like you can see this character is wearing a Black Flag t-shirt. Well, my co-founder, he's in a popular indie band, Starfucker, but he's also played with a lot of punk bands in his youth, and he still moonlights occasionally with punk bands on tour. So you go through the collection, there's all these Easter eggs that were interjected by our team, whether it was things they like, sports they play, books they enjoy. Like there's some sci-fi novel references in there, Star Trek, a lot of robots, in fact. So a lot of it's just really extensions of our own nerdy interests, and the music just fits the tone of the collection, right? Like it is video game sounding music, but it was all produced through conventional studio software and then reprocessed to sound like video game sounds. In fact, this collection, the Dreamers, was processed through a Sega Genesis like software synth, basically, that reproduces the sounds as they would have come out of that piece of hardware. So it actually constrains like the melodic compositions to this sound chip that only produces like these specific parameters of outputs, and that's what we got. And ironically, the albums that we produced, we didn't upload the full album cuts to the internet for the Dream Loops album. We'll probably do the same thing for the Dreamers, but the actual A side of the album is real instrumentation. It's keyboards, guitars, drums, synthesizers, and he has a lot of guest collabs from other members of bands on his polyvinyl record label, like Davey Pierce of Montreal does a track, Blackbird. So they're full arrangements of these songs that were produced to sound like video game music. But then when you get the physical album, it's like an actual legit piece of music, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, and you were holding up the cassette earlier during the introduction.
Yeah.
So you guys just started sending those out?
Yeah, in January.
And what is that exactly? That's the track that comes with each NFT.
So it's actually a full album. So it's we have vinyl and cassettes. So the first collection, which was Dream Loops, this is the album for Dream Loops. The Dreamers album has not dropped yet. We're targeting summertime for that. Okay. We're going to do a different redemption mechanism for that. So we had this funny staking mechanism for the first album where we built a piece of software that required the user who held a redeemable physical copy to stake the album for 6 months in the same wallet. And then after which a metadata state change occurs and it turns to redeemable, at which point they can sell it and move it on the marketplace. So the redeemables tend to sell on secondaries for more money. Why? Because there's a physical associated with them until it's redeemed, at which point then the trait changes to already redeemed. Where was I going with this? Lost my train of thought. That's okay. But it's not just the audio file from the NFT itself. There's actually a mega mix of like 25 minutes on one side of it's like basically a DJ mix of all sorts of different loops from the collection, and then the other side is like a full album with 9 songs produced by Keel, basically longer arrangements of the loops that are found in the collection. And we're going to do something similar for the Dreamers collection. It's kind of fun.
Got it. So back to Dreamers. So Dreamers came out October 21 is when these ended up minting. So we're about 6 months, almost exactly 6 months in now.
Holy smokes. Yeah, it is 6 months.
Which is crazy to think about. Yeah. And now we're getting to kind of like the next phases of the roadmap, right? So we're here to talk about Dreamers Vx Airdrop. So let's talk about it. I read the Medium post. We got some previews here of what the 3D voxelized versions of the 2D 16-bit avatars are going to be. But I want to hear the story from you.
Yeah. So cool roadmap item. Like we bought a Sandbox partner parcel or an estate from them back midsummer when we just had Dream Loops, and they did a cool item for us. Like if you go through the Sandbox items collection, there's a cassette tape that says Bitlectro Labs on it that they produced and dropped for us. I wish it had some music attached, but it's still a cool thing. I thought, oh, that's nice of them to do that. And we were throwing these metaverse parties and exploring our second collection, and we thought, like, what if we do these in 3D so that we can bring them into the Sandbox once the Sandbox is live? So we put that down as one of our roadmap items. So shortly after we dropped the Dreamers 2D collection, which you can see behind me also, you were just showing on OpenSea, we got to work on producing all of these assets. So most of these are produced by Keel. He does have a few illustrators working beneath him that he art directs. So it's a lot of work producing 15,000 3D characters. So we did have to hand create or hand recreate all of the 2D elements from the collection. Wow. And then basically write scripts that worked within Sandbox's Vox Edit software to then programmatically combine them. So part of it was scripted, was engineered, part of it was done by hand. Like most NFTs, right? Unless you're dealing with the strictly procedurally generated stuff. And we buttoned that up, at least the asset creation, like over a month ago, and then put in our launch date, pushed for our marketing to get more outreach and more awareness of what we're doing. Even though it's a free mint, basically it's a roadmap item for our holders. Someone asked me the other day, like, why didn't you sell these? I was like, yeah, like we could have, but I don't know. It's also just fun to like give things to your ride or die community members that have been with you for ages. So this will be a free claim on Saturday. There's no snapshot. It's 1-to-1. So like if a savvy user can figure out which ones have been minted or not, and there's going to be an easy way to do so, they can go grab the 2D one and mint it a week from now, 2 weeks from now if they decide. Oh yeah, that's a demo. So you can import these into the local Sandbox environment. So we've been testing them. They are using a slightly larger model than the conventional Sandbox character. So we're actually using the same model type as the CyberKong's VX, which is kind of fun. It allows you a little more pixel density, but the team has conveyed to us that that's not going to be a problem. So our models will be slightly larger, but they look a little cooler in my opinion. Yeah. And the hope is that when we have like Sandbox events in 3 months time, 4 months time, whenever the Sandbox is live and public, that our crew, our community will show up dressed as their dreamers in the metaverse.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. I mean, they look great.
Thank you.
So congrats on the work done today. I think most of the market participants, myself included, probably don't have insight into the work that is required to turn 2D avatars into 3D avatars that can actually participate in metaverses.
Yeah.
So listening to you kind of go through the laundry list of tasks there, it's a big effort. So going through that and then offering this as a free mint / airdrop, I think it is certainly commendable. But I love that. I love the decision to reward the community members who have been here and are still here for, either since the mint 6 months ago or along for the ride now. So I definitely appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mindset. I'm just going through here to see anything else from this post that we should pull up. I think that about covers it. So remind me, you're throwing a party tonight, this Friday. When again is the first party that you're hoping to see the 3D avatars showing up?
Whenever Sandbox is live. So we've been doing monthly events in crypto voxels since June of last year. So I think this is event 10, which is kind of cool. Like we show up monthly. We always have a lineup of DJs. We have guests. We've done Animetas. We've done Society of the Hourglass, Oni Force, Heart Project, Wicked Crane. I mean, like sometimes we'll have like 4 different guests on a party. We've done a lot of cool collabs with different teams that have dropped into our space. And it's just one way that we continually engage with our community. And we are music focused with some of our projects, although now a lot of what we're pivoting into is not so much music focused, but that's still a big part of our team. In fact, multiple team members are musicians aside from their day-to-day roles with either on our engineering team or on community management, et cetera. And we want to convey that through our messaging. And a lot of our community members are musicians as well. Like we have a channel where users talk about synthesizers, others share links to songs they produced. Like some of our members have produced tracks with like Danny Elfman and Brian Eno, like just bizarre. Like they do great work. And so we're sort of here for that angle of this as well. And I think a lot of the experiences that you can have in metaverses right now are kind of simple. Like most of it's galleries. And I'm really hoping like Sandbox cracks the code on that with like a lot of the gamified components that they have within it. Like you can have a sword, you can play a platformer, you can kill monsters. At least that's what we've seen in the alpha demos. But it's tricky to get users in the present metaverses, Decentraland, crypto voxels, whatever it happens to be, to stay for extended periods unless you give them some other form of entertainment. So we found music is a great way to get our users to congregate and chat for a few hours a month, and dress up. Sometimes we do have a few crypto voxels wearables that we share. So hoping whenever the Sandbox is public, like I know they're moving into a beta phase. But it doesn't look like they're gonna have like a 1.0 of the game until summertime. So hopefully summer we'll be able to pivot into Sandbox parties and do some events there. Which also something to note, like we're metaverse agnostic. We like to say we go where the users want us to go. So if Sandbox is the winner, we'll do Sandbox. If another metaverse emerges and we can re-rig and import our voxel characters there, we'll do that. We'll figure out the scripting and the engineering required to import those to another platform too. So we'll go where the users want to be.
Yeah, and I want to get there and explore that a little bit. I think you nailed one of the biggest problem with metaverses in current state, Web3 2022, is there's no real reason for users to congregate and stay in metaverses for longer periods of time. And I think parties are really one of the biggest current solutions that work right now. So I guess to our listeners or viewers who have not been to a metaverse party, I encourage you to do it. So like I went to my first one. It was an Oiler Beats party. I want to say it was like last April or May. I thought, this is kind of silly, but I'll try it. And I'll say it was fun. It was surprisingly fun. There was DJs playing. The
Exactly.
music was great. You're there. I wasn't like necessarily interacting with a whole lot of other people. Just because I was still kind of new to the environment. I think this one was in Crypto Voxels. Um, but I do encourage folks to go try it out. They're fun. Um, I'm curious, do you spend much time in any of these metaverses besides when you're kind of hosting and attending parties?
I like to cruise around. I've been to the Euler Beats space. They've got a cool gating function, even though you can kind of bypass it. But I love it. I love Euler Beats. That's one of my favorite music projects, by the way. Although they were very expensive when I first entered the NFT space, and I was
Same.
like immediately priced out. I was like, oh man, like 6 ETH or whatever they got up to. Yeah, I try to see what's out there, how other users are pushing the boundaries with their gallery builds and what they're doing with events. Like we do pretty cool stuff with the events, and our consistency is nice, and I think our production quality is high. But there's others out there that argue I'd say do it better than I do, because I'm not a production engineer for broadcasting by trade, but I figured out how to use OBS. We've got a nice multi-camera setup. I've got good audio equipment, but there are other teams like Warp Sound does great streams, and they're doing like a metaverse tour they just dropped into our parcel, but they're collabing with some other cool teams. I saw a cool DCL party or Decentraland party the other night, and I thought, oh, this looks really fun, really good build. Yeah, I do try to keep tabs on what's out there, if only to inform like our process and try to make sure we're staying on top of like what the users want to see, and try to find ways to get our users more engaged and get more eyeballs on what we're trying to do in the metaverse. I do think there are a lot of limitations in what you can do in crypto voxels as well as DCL right now, just by the nature of those platforms. And I'm hoping Sandbox sort of raises the ceiling. And if their demos are any indication, like they had that dead mouse experience in the first alpha, and there was basically like a nightclub built around this demo in the alpha. And I thought like, oh, there's lighting effects in here and stage effects and things that we can't do in crypto voxels that I'm definitely going to try to implement in Sandbox or copy to inform our practices once we can do it. So yeah, I try to play with this stuff as much as I can. Even though, to both our previous points, like there's not a ton to do other in the spaces other than like look at everyone's collections or arts, but but it's also interesting to see some of the brand activations you get in some of these spaces too. Like the DCL had like an Adidas gallery at some point, the Guggenheim, and like there's conventional art galleries that have spaces. So even just if for a few minutes, there is something novel about seeing how these brands activate themselves and want to have a presence in the metaverse.
Yeah, I want to say, like, was it Miller Lite? One of the beer companies had like a bar or something. I think it was Decentraland. It might have been Sandbox around the Super Bowl. But there's an elephant in the metaverse room that we haven't talked about that's coming sometime this month
Oh yeah,
with Yuga Land.
yeah.
So
Is
I'm
it promised this
curious.
month? Are we sure it's April?
It's
Is that
supposed
the
to be
land sale?
April.
Okay,
That's from Yuga Labs. They said it was going to be in April. I think my target is it's going to be at the very end of the
makes
month.
sense.
I think they're not going to want to mess with the Moonbirds launch
Oh yeah.
next weekend as a pretty big liquidity event. But I'm curious if you think kind of your thoughts on Yuga, if they're now kind of a Web 2 or corporate versus decentralized, and or do you think are they going to win the metaverse in the short term?
Yeah. I think about the whole who's going to win the metaverse argument quite a bit. And I am of the opinion that you can have multiple players with a reasonable user base, or even users that utilize both for different reasons. But I mean, they're such a brand. Like Sandbox has a great product, but now you have Yuga, which with the Bored Apes and also their licensing of the Punks and Meebits IP, they have all of this IP in front of them as pieces of their brand and identity that their users glean onto and use as their profile pictures, right? Like there's this identity component in Web3, in the metaverse even, associated with what they're doing that say the Sandbox doesn't quite have yet, even though the Sandbox has a bunch of cool brands attached like Snoop Dogg and Walking Dead, Dead Mouse, etc. So I'm of the opinion that assuming Yuga can come out with a solid product, which they're certainly capitalized to do. I don't know how long they've been building this, right? Like if we could go back and look at like the Mutant sale, right? For those that remember, obviously 20,000 units in the collection, half were sold. And I think at the time they grossed like what, $90+ million in Ethereum.
Sounds right. Yeah.
And depending on how they utilize that, like that's more money than a lot of AAA games cost. I mean, not to say that there aren't, Call of Duties out there that cost 300 million, 400 million, your God of Wars, whatever. Those do tend to breach the $100 million mark, but certainly you could build a Metaverse protocol with that capital that they had. So the question I have is, have they been working on this since then? At what point was this in their roadmap or their planned development timeline? And will we see the rudiments of that Metaverse when they launch, or is it just going to be the land sale? Like, to what end can I play? If that's the case, I'd love to try it. I want to see a Metaverse where there's not a lot of user sharding. Like, my criticism of Decentraland is that if I send users to my parcel, they end up on different servers. So it's hard to make that critical mass like we can in crypto voxels. So if they can crack that nut and then combine it with a slightly more polished user experience, like, shit, we'll do a Metaverse party there in March, assuming I can buy some land. So yeah, I've got my ApeCoin sidelined for that, assuming it's going to sell in Ape. And I'd probably, if I were a speculating man, which I am, I'd probably take a position and buy some Yuga Labs Metaverse land. Absolutely. Yeah. What are your thoughts? What do you think? Like, is that an exciting prospect for you? Or is it a pass? Is it a buy? What's your take on this?
Oh, I'm smashing the buy button. So I've been evolving my trading style personally. So, the winning trading style in 2021 was spray and pray. Like, unfortunately, that was the trading style that won if you're able to hold on to some projects. But now I'm trying to make concentrated bets on teams that I believe in or proven teams. So you mentioned Warp Sound, so I've got a position in Warps, which has been transparently a little hard to hold on to because the space is so fast moving. So when the teams take time to build it, it can be tough because the attention spans are just so short.
Snaps.
In general, I'm bearish Metaverse because I think we will have one overall winner eventually, and I don't think we know who that winner will be. So I typically will enter plays like Treeverse or World Wide Web Land at a smaller entry point, and then once it hits a certain point, for me, it's like 2 ETH. I'm a seller there. It's a little bit too expensive. I think Yuga Land is different. Yuga Labs has kind of proven themselves to be, one of the leading teams. They've got essentially infinite market demand for their products right now. I think it's unclear how many the average person will be able to mint. I think they said 1 ETH priced in Ape, so that's like 300 Ape right now. I'll be accumulating as many as I can at 300 Ape. I think it's going to go up quite a bit from there. So I'm definitely excited about it. To your point, you really got me thinking, like, how long have they been working on this? I think what we're going to get at the end of April is an NFT plot of land. I don't think we're going to be getting a working Metaverse. Like, I don't think we're going to be able to enter. I don't think you're going to be able to attend a party in the Yugaverse in early May. So I am curious, the risk to Yuga Land will be, how long does that take to develop and, roll out a working product? But I'm definitely bullish, and I've been DCAing into ApeCoin and will continue doing so, certainly ahead of that launch. So go ahead.
I think I'd agree with everything you just said. And I'd also like to pick up some land there. I would, if I had to bet on whether or not they come out with a functional product by April, May, or end of April or May, I'd agree with you. I don't think it's going to be there yet, but who knows? They might surprise us. Like, they have been capitalized for some time. That would be a that would be a tremendous feat for them to execute that quickly. And I think that would also be a really good look. Like there's a lot of eyes on them right now with like how capitalized they are, the outside investment in Yuga. I've heard some rumblings of like, oh wow, like this is becoming a too big to fail sort of scenario, wherein there's so much attention on what Yuga is trying to do that if they screw this up, it's going to be a real bad blight on the NFT ecosystem. I'm not sure I 100% agree with that sentiment. However, certainly it would look bad if they can't execute on some of the things that they're purporting to do. So anything they can do to accelerate the process and start delivering on some of these lofty promises will be a net boom for Web3.
It's such a double-edged sword. You know, you do well, you deliver, you execute, your valuations go up. Now the execution risk just gets higher and higher, so that if you don't meet standards and deliver at the market valuations we're seeing, I mean, ApeCoin's sitting at 11 billion fully diluted right now, which is kind of, you know, absurd. Let's just say it. If they have any missteps, everything's gonna tank for sure. And then will that bring down the whole market? It certainly could. I don't know that I fully buy that or not. Maybe it will benefit that next tier of some of the rising star projects. But you know, I'm curious. We were chatting a little bit before the show. So clearly, you know, you call yourself a speculator. You trade a little bit. Earlier in the interview, you kind of hinted at your trading style. So it sounds like, or what I heard from you is, you like to build bigger positions, maybe on the lower entry side.
Yeah,
so to speak.
Or at least
I'd love to hear a little bit more.
Yeah, I try to buy multiple units of whatever it is that I'm acquiring. Obviously, because it's hard, if not impossible, to fractionalize your NFTs unless you're using some of these like fractionalization protocols like NFTX, NFT20, whatever, or the fractional platform, but not really designed for you to fractionalize like lower priced NFTs, right? So I try to buy multiples of things that I believe in, so that if we see a higher price valuation, you know, a week later, a month later, I can exit, cover my entry cost, then gamble on something new, essentially. I don't take as large of positions as I'd like. I'd like your spray and pray description, because it's like I only have enough dry powder to take a few here, and here. So I try to cast a wide net, or spray and pray, as you might put it, with a few units of projects that I think might have some upside, and then see what happens. I'd say for every, you know, good play I make, there's 7 or 8 bad ones. I've more than covered most of the time. Maybe I've gotten lucky on things like the Bored Apes and Oni, a few others that I've been lucky enough to get it on early. But I also take a lot of losses. Sometimes I just buy stuff because I like the team and the artwork, and I want to see them succeed too. There's some things I just buy knowing full well I'm going to lose all my money on them, but you know, I want to have it. Yeah, and I do. Maybe I trade more than I should some days. The problem is I also don't have all the intel that, say, like you might have as like a media personality. Like I'm over here building, and then I'll have like, you know, maybe 30 minutes a day where I can, you know, go through and see what everyone's chattering about on Twitter, or I watch a podcast or watch your show. So I'm like late to some of the news, right? And I'm sitting in probably like 60 Discord servers, right? But I'm mostly focused on mine and then a couple other you know, close associates. So I miss a lot of like the good alpha, and then I'm left playing catch up, or you're buying at higher price points. Occasionally, Jason on my team, who you've spoken with, will ping me and be like, "Dude, you gotta check these out. Everyone in my so and so chats this." I'm like, "Okay, I'll trust his judgment." Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. But I think it's important to have some skin in the game too, as a project founder. If you believe in the space, you'll have a bunch of these random collections in your wallet, because you want to see them succeed, you want to see them grow. And I'm certainly in that camp where there's a lot of cool stuff being built. There's also a lot of bad actors and a lot of cash grabs out there, but you got to take some shots. Like if you have any interest in Web3 and the success of it, like you should be a trader, you should be a collector, even if you just have a little bit of capital to play with. Like at least take the plunge. For anyone listening that's you know, hasn't yet installed MetaMask and bought their first NFT, like, you know, try it out. I like to give NFTs. Like sometimes I'll have cheap ones in my wallet that I'll send to friends if they're Web3 curious. And most of the time, which is nice, like when you gift something to someone, Like you could sort of induce that endowment effect where they don't want to sell it because it was a gift, unless they're a complete asshole. But so then they become curious. Then I'll get a text 2 weeks later and they're like, oh, I bought a cool cat. I'm like, holy smokes. Or I bought, like this has happened where like I send a friend a dreamer as a nicety. And then they text me 2 weeks later and say they bought a dead fella or something. I think, holy smokes, you just went full ham and spent $6,000 on a green zombie NFT. I love it. It's cool to see, but a lot of the growth in this space is that word of mouth growth and having someone you trust and someone that's not a complete idiot. Like I'm not saying I'm not a complete idiot sometimes, but it's, I have my conventional investments, but then I also have this NFT wallet with things that I like to speculate on and gamble. And I say speculate. I know people like to say, I'm investing in NFTs. It is a wildly volatile market. And when it's this volatile, I'm like, oh, it's speculation. Not to say we don't speculate on stocks too, whether it's AMC or GameStop. I mean, some of these markets are volatile as hell as well. Or you could be playing energy futures right now, also volatile as hell. And in some instances, way more volatile than say cryptocurrency. Like Bitcoin's kind of been flat. I mean, lately I did pump up to 47, but it's kind of been on this horizontal move, wherein some movements in equities have been wilder day to day. So yeah, on a bit of a rant there, but yeah.
Anyway, it's all part of, like, if you're deep down the rabbit hole in crypto and NFTs and stock trading, it feels like you're playing the great online game where it's just all about generating capital and whatnot. But I want to touch on a few of the other points you made on NFTs as gifts. I love it. I think NFTs are great gifts. Gave my wife a couple pudgy penguins. She loved it. It got her into like interest in NFTs. I think it's a great way to onboard. But beyond that, I think, you mentioning as a founder, how you feel like it's important to be buying NFTs and be trading and staying close to the market really hit home with me. And I kind of want you to share what we chatted about right before the show here as a potential red flag for our listeners if they see a founder's wallet. So I'd love for you to kind of retell that.
Yeah, this has come up a few times where I'll be talking with someone on another team and you see them on Twitter and sometimes they share their ENS address, or sometimes I'm like, oh, hey, I'll trade you one of mine for one of yours from our projects or something, assuming they're of like value. And you get the wallet address and you look and you're like, oh, this person doesn't collect anything. Like they've got a couple of their own project and maybe some extraneous airdrops. That's usually a red flag to me. I'm like, oh, you don't actually believe in this space. You're just here extracting capital from it, via your sale. And that usually looks bad to me. Not something I like to see. And then I'm not going to point any names. I remember I was talking to someone on a Twitter Spaces. It was a guest of ours actually, and was talking all this big game about trades and his collection. And I looked through his wallet and I was like, wait, this guy he hardly trades at all. He's mostly just dumping and liquidating things and fast flipping. And it's not that there's anything wrong with that. You should be taking some capital off the table. I don't see anything wrong with the flip here and there, but it gave me the vibe of like, oh, you don't actually have any vested interest in the growth or development of this stuff in terms of like long-term valuations and or even the tech side. You're just here to extract some money via your drop, and it doesn't feel good. And I think your community members notice that stuff too. Like I'll have people message me and be like, oh, I didn't know you were part of this community too. I was like, oh yeah, you're snooping my wallet. Well, that's why it's there. Like, yeah, I tend to buy the projects I support within reason, within what I can afford,
Right.
But yeah.
No, I think that's such good advice. It's actually a tactic I'm going to start using with, when evaluating new projects. Maybe go through the founder's wallet and see, like, are they actually a participant in this community or not? It's definitely a good test. Well, I love the discussion that we've had here. I guess kind of before we close out, any closing thoughts or anything else you want to share with our listeners or viewers?
Yeah. Join us at the Metaverse party. Always shilling our parties. It's a good time. I'm not going to tell you to buy anything, but come check us out. That's at 4 p.m. Today, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. UTC. I know everything's global in NFTs, but we'll be at bitlectro.party. We actually point a domain name at our CryptoVoxels parcel. So you can cruise in. You don't have to log in. You don't have to have a CryptoVoxels account. You don't even have to log in with your MetaMask. You go to the third floor. We've got 8 DJs. We've got the Oni Force. Oh, interesting little tidbit. The Oni are dropping a special NFT to everyone that comes to the party and fills out our giveaway form. We've got a pre-mint set up to collect wallet addresses, and the Oni will be dropping something. It's not a POAP. Everyone's like, it's a POAP. Like, it's not a POAP. They're making something special, and they're gonna use the party attendees as the first recipient. So that'll be fun. We do some giveaways as well, and then of course, Saturday is the VX drop. So if you own a Dreamer, you'll be able to claim the 3D voxelized counterpart of that Dreamer for free, save for a little gas you pay to mint it from the contract. But that's happening on April 9th, which is tomorrow, which I'm excited about. Yeah.
Exciting times for sure with the Dreamers project and everything you've got going on. So we'll make sure to we'll post some of the links in our show notes. Again, one more time for the information for the party. It's at Bitlectro Party.
But Bitlectro.party. Who I discovered when looking for an interesting domain to point at our Metaverse parcel that you can buy .party domain name. So we actually used it at NFT LA. Actually, we threw a pizza party with Hashku and Society of the Hourglass and Consensus NFT, and we bought NFTpizza.party, and that sent everyone to the Eventbrite page to RSVP. So I'm going to buy these .party domains anytime we do an event. But we've got Bitlectro.party to join the crypto voxel party at 4 p.m.
Awesome. We'll head over there and get your Oni NFT if you sign up for the giveaway. So that is enticing. I love the .party domains. I'm going to have to check that out myself.
Completely silly.
I'll say, Gabe, this is one of my favorite interviews. I really appreciate your time and you coming on the show. Best of luck with the airdrop and everything else that you all have in the roadmap. It's exciting. Thank you,
Tyler. I like your insight. I like that you're clearly one of the smarter personalities in this space. Anyway, fun conversation. I do appreciate it.
Well, thank you. You're buttering me up and making the ego even bigger. But it's been awesome having you on. To our listeners and viewers, thanks for tuning in this week. We're still working out time for the show next week, so stay tuned. Otherwise, we'll be back in 2 weeks. Till then, stay safe out there, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Good day.